What's going on, everyone? Bran here from Bloody Breakdown, and today, big news. We've been hearing some rumblings about it, but I think if you're part of the Friday the 13th fandom, you're used to hearing these rumblings, but never anything concrete. Finally, we have something to sink our teeth into. I mean, you got to think about it. We have watched, as fans of Jason, we've kind of sat back and we've got to see Michael return, which was incredible. We got to see Ghostface return, Pinhead, Candyman, Leatherface, you name it. Pretty much anyone and everyone in that echelon of slasher icons, with the exception of Freddy, of course, but I believe that's going to be coming very soon. We've even got new Saw stuff coming up that I'm going to be talking about at a later date on the channel. But Jason finally going to have his day, because as some of you may have already heard here, as you can see by the article I have pulled up, Crystal Lake, Friday the 13th prequel series coming soon from Bryan Fuller and Peacock. So I'm already glad that I have a Peacock account. It's one of the very few streaming services that I actually utilize. So this is great news for me anyway. Pressing Bryan Fuller attached, already I'm liking what I'm seeing here. So let's go ahead and dig in. It's been a long time, folks. Let's just jump into this article. I know a lot of you are excited about this, just like I am. So we've been here. It says it has been now a full 13 years. How interesting is that? Since the release of the last Friday the 13th movie, with the franchise trapped in a messy legal battle ever since. Finally, the wait is almost over. So Variety has made the hugely surprising announcement today that Peacock has ordered up Crystal Lake, a Friday the 13th prequel series from Bryan Fuller. And they put here, you may remember, who worked on the Hannibal series, which I was a big fan of. So I'm really interested to see where this is going to go. The craziest part of this huge news, and it really is for me too, A24 will serve as the studio behind the series. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, on the surface of it, it kind of just, A24 is a bit more of like, I guess, quote unquote, more sophisticated horror or elevated horror, whatever terminology is being tossed around these days. But it's also, from my perspective, the studio that if they're going to do horror, they're going to put out something original. So finally getting their hands on an already existing series, franchise, I'm very interested to see what A24 would do with something like Friday the 13th. So we're finally going to get to see this. Each one of these aforementioned horror icons that always return under different circumstances, with different studios, different people directing, different people in the film, different writers, what have you. So it's really interesting to see how these things are being modernized here. An A24 Peacock streaming series, I never thought I would see the day, but man, am I interested to see what happens, and man, am I really glad to see the Friday the 13th franchise returning. So the article goes on to say Peacock has given the project a straight-to-series order, with Crystal Lake being described as an expanded prequel to the original Friday the 13th franchise. And holy shit, there are so many possibilities. Friday the 13th is really underrated when it comes to its lore, I think, by a lot of people. There is so much that has been touched upon and never really expounded upon. So, really great idea in my estimation. Variety details, the show will be written by Bryan Fuller, who is also the showrunner and an executive producer. Victor Miller, who penned the original film in the franchise, will also executive produce alongside Mark Toberoff and Rob Barsamian, I believe. I'm stupid with names, you'll have to excuse me. And A24. So you'll notice Victor Miller in there, who was part of this ongoing court battle with Sean S. Cunningham. So there's questions I'm sure a lot of you are going to have about what they can and cannot use in the show, which I'm going to bring up an article here momentarily after we get done with this one, that is very telling as to what they can and cannot do inside the realm of this show. And it's good news, so hang on and wait till the end. We're going to take a look at that as well. So Friday the 13th is one of the most iconic horror franchises in horror movie history, and we were dying to revisit this story with our upcoming drama series Crystal Lake, said Susan Rovner, chairman of entertainment content for NBC Universal Television and streaming. Quote, "We cannot wait to get to work with Brian Fuller, a gifted visionary creator who I've had the pleasure of being a longtime friend and collaborator, along with our incredible partners at A24 in this updated version for Peacock that will thrill long-standing fans of the franchise." Another quote here goes on to say, "I discovered Friday the 13th in the pages of Famous Monsters magazine when I was 10 years old, and I've been thinking about this story ever since," Fuller said. So this, of course, being a quote from Brian Fuller. "When it comes to horror, A24 raises the bar and pushes the envelope, and I'm thrilled to be exploring the campgrounds of Crystal Lake under their banner, and Susan Rovner is simply the best at what she does. It's a pleasure and an honor to be working with her again." So then they kind of go down and talk about a lot of the legal troubles that had been going on, like I mentioned earlier about Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller. And that kind of brings us to the next article that I'm going to be showing here. So while I do that, I'm going to solve, I won't say solve, but I'm going to show you there are some answers to these questions already, because I've seen a lot of people talking about it. And we actually do have some answers as it relates to that lawsuit, what can and can't be used as far as the show goes. So let's dig right in. And as you can see here, the title of this article, Crystal Lake showrunner reveals what the Friday the 13th prequel can use. And this is a really good article too. It goes a little bit more in depth than the original announcement did. As it says, following the announcement of the prequel series, a little bit more has come to light. So let's go ahead and dig into the quote from Brian Fuller on the upcoming Friday the 13th prequel series regarding what they can and cannot use inside this show. So he says, quote, "Everything. We can use everything. We can go to hell. We can go to space. That's not to say that we will do those things, although if we do go 10 seasons, I will be lobbying hard to go to space," Fuller joked. A24 and Mark Tabaroff, who is Victor Miller's lawyer, have beautifully, excruciatingly assembled all Friday the 13th rights as a streaming series. We have the rights to do everything underneath the Friday the 13th umbrella. The movie rights are a completely different thing. Very interesting point there. They are tied up at New Line and are super, super messy and probably won't be untangled anytime soon. But as far as us chickens in the television industry roost, we have access to anything and everything that Friday the 13th has done up till this point. So that is a very, very interesting thing to think about here. That's more than likely why we're getting a series as opposed to a new film. It's because this is a way to generate interest in the franchise once again, gauge the interest that you can get, that you can generate, see if it could translate into film, if that's something that you can eventually come to terms with one day. But that's in the future. You know, whatever happens, happens. I'm really interested about this series and knowing that there are no limitations on what they can and cannot use from the Friday the 13th lore. That right there sells it for me. You got A24 doing this thing. It's going to be streaming a series, a prequel series. And to go a little bit more in depth, I'm pretty sure, yes, there is a slight quote here as to what Brian Fuller really considers this show. And so it says here, Fuller also gave fans a small hint on what to expect from the series, saying it was less of a prequel series and more of a, quote, pre-remakeable series. So take that for what you will. I'm getting the idea that we're going to see the events that led to Jason's death. We're going to see Mrs. Voorhees probably losing it, doing things to sabotage the camp, ending with, you know, murdering these camp counselors. We'll probably, if this thing goes long enough, we'll probably end up seeing the rise of Jason himself. I had a hearing that from certain sources that a season 2 is already almost guaranteed. I'm not exactly sure how one would gauge that already. But in any event, I'm very excited to see what happens here. A lot of pieces are here in this puzzle to create something that could be really interesting. So What do you all think? Let me know your thoughts, your comments. Leave them down below in the comment section. While you're there, check the description section. You'll see a couple of links to support this channel or follow me on Twitter. And yeah, before we depart today, leave a like if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you like horror, that's what we do here at Bloody Breakdown. So go ahead, subscribe, turn on notifications if you'd like. Horror is what we do here, and if you like it, you'll like us. So yeah, with that said, I'm Brand, and you've just got the Bloody Breakdown on Friday the 13th.